Hello, everybody. I hope you can all hear me well. For the majority of this, I think I'm just going to be jumping off a specific web page that is on the library site, and I believe the link is in the chat. So if you want to follow along without me, be my guest, and I'm going to see if I can share my screen right now. All right, you should all be seeing the library homepage, ohio.edu/library.
We can see.
I should add that please just interrupt me at any time. This is really, for me, it's more about answering your questions than being an expert on this type of content. So please interrupt me, interrupt through the chat, turn your mic on, whatever you need to do that. Okay, I'm on the library homepage. I just want to pull up my contact information really quickly under the About, Staff Directory. My hair has grown about 2 feet since this picture was taken, so you may not recognize me on the street, but there he is. So if you go to the staff directory here, my information's here, and the reason I bring this up is I forgot to change my phone message, so I suppose I had to do that. But my email address is here. I also you have access to my calendar, so you can just click this, find out what's available, jump in there, and then just some of my information down below. But this is just a quick, instead of having an opening slide here, I didn't create a PowerPoint, so here is my information. And at any time you can send me an email, and if you're not through the College of Education or your question doesn't necessarily relate to education, I may bounce you to a librarian that's in another section of the library, other subject area. So, but I will get back to you ASAP. All right, I'm going to go back to the library homepage, and let's see here. So for the remainder of this presentation, I guess I'm going to be going to services and faculty. And this, when I get here, this will be the link that I actually already placed at the beginning of the chat. But this is just kind of an entry point to services that the library provides for faculty. I'm going to go over here on the left and click on instructional support, and then affordable course materials. Now again, this is in lieu of a PowerPoint, which I did not create. But I figured I really kind of wanted to leave this open for questions, and I didn't want to have you all just staring at a PowerPoint presentation for the next however many minutes. So I'm going to start here, affordable course materials, just right in the introductory paragraph. This is in fact a campus-wide partnership. This, I think, might be the Faculty Commons. That's now the collab on the, I'm not sure where this is, to be honest. But down here, you get kind of an idea of the timeline that we've been working on. And this is a collaboration between OII, the university libraries, and OIT. It's been going on, I guess, on and off since 2015. And you can see on this timeline, some of the library interactions would be the alt textbook initiative. We did something with Tophat here at the library. We have what's called the Ohio Open Library, and I'll show you examples of the Ohio Open Library, and I'll also talk a little bit about this grant. I was actually the PI on this, and I'm getting ready to write the report on it. So if anybody has questions about anything on this timeline, you're more than welcome to interrupt. Essentially, these alt textbook initiatives that we had 2 of them here. I'm not sure if the second one is on here or not. These were invitations to faculty. They could come in and they had to participate in a workshop. The first one was just a single 2-hour session. And then the second alt textbook initiative was, I think it were 6 1-hour workshops that you had to come to, and they ranged on in things like how to incorporate Blackboard, how to deal with copyright in your classes, that sort of thing. And then we had the librarians, and we had folks from OII, Center for Teaching and Learning, I believe, was involved in one of the alt textbook presentations. And we just worked with instructors to try to reduce the cost of the materials in their courses. And I believe with the 2 alt textbooks, I think it was somewhere around $300,000 that were saved for the students that were represented by the faculty in the workshops. The 1804 grant, which just finished at the end of June, it involved working on projects with faculty. So essentially, it was a $20,000 amount of money that I could then work with faculty to help them get their OER up and running. And essentially, I was kind of a manager, a project manager. And so what would happen would be I would hire student workers to then enter data or writing anything into something like Pressbooks. And then that student would work with the faculty member to get that content up and running. So we had 5 projects going, and I can talk about those more in detail later if you would like. But we did some of the highlights of that particular grant. We paid a student to work with an art history prof to create a test bank. So they were then able to use open education resources and varying different types of resources that would be cheaper for the students, but that those things didn't come with test banks. So we had a graduate student actually work with the faculty member to create these ginormous test bank lists of questions that then the different instructors could use for the exams. So that was a really cool project, and one that I hadn't personally even imagined going into the grant. But when we started talking to professors, a lot of them were concerned because they would like to switch from the more expensive textbook to something that was more manageable. But a lot of times those textbooks come with test banks and online content and PowerPoints and that sort of thing. So in order to ease, I guess, the pain of a faculty member trying to incorporate those things, we paid this graduate student to help develop test banks. Another example, and I'm just kind of jumping all over the place here, but I'm going to go down here. The Ohio Open Library is a repository that the libraries here, I guess, manage. And these top 2 titles were titles that came out of the grant. So basically what I did was I hired a graduate student to work with Dr. Ryan to create. He would come up with the content. The graduate student would look for visuals that were open access, creative license, available content, and then they would put it together. They used a lot of government documents in order to create these 2, Volume 1 and Volume 2 of an occupational hygiene and safety textbook. So Dr. Ryan was essentially replacing the textbook that he had been using with something that was open access. This one is actually very cool, and it also came out of the 1804 grant. Dr. Ganeshan created using open pedagogy, which is kind of an exciting area for a lot of people involved in OER, but essentially she had students that she was teaching in these classes. They all came up with content, and then we paid students to translate. Somebody in the office came up with the cover design. Then we would pay for the press books, which was relatively cheap, and then push everything onto our repository. So this is kind of, I guess, an upper end version of an OER where you're actually creating the textbook from scratch. But I think open pedagogy has a lot of benefits, both for the faculty member and the students creating the content. And then it's, of course, Creative Commons license, so anybody can take it, they can build on it, they can use it. And so our hope is that this will just get bigger and bigger, with more chapters being added, hopefully every time she teaches the course. Are there any questions at this point on, I've kind of been jumping all over the place here, and I apologize for that. Okay. All right, so I'm back at that main page for the affordable course materials. I guess, again, kind of a takeaway here, especially if you're in the College of Education. If you have any questions about this kind of thing at all, just shoot me an email. I'm not in the library. I'm in our guest bedroom right now, but I am answering emails every day as quickly as possible. So if you do have questions about anything here, just let me know. One thing I do want to point out, because of COVID, the library has different policies at this point, and some of the policies that we have are currently changed. So I believe OhioLink started up again today, if I'm not mistaken, for some institutions that are participating. So essentially, if a school has a library and they are open and they are willing to start OhioLink again, that is moving forward. But for example, course reserves here. So the second bullet point, most of the time we would be able to scan chapters, which we can still do, or put a physical copy on the shelf and have folks come in and check out that physical material for 2 hours at a time. Currently, the physical content is not an option. We are following library guidelines that, so when a book comes in, we have to put it on a shelf. I believe we're doing that for 3 days before it then gets reshelved. It's to make sure that if anybody has returned items that where they're ill, this gives the materials time to, I guess, not be ill, or however you want to put that. But we are working very hard to make sure that our course reserves and the digitization are still an option for you as you're teaching your courses. So I'm just going to click on this link really quickly. As you can see, the physical reserves aren't available. You can use this request form for almost anything, and I'll keep coming back to this request form on and off. And I've been sending faculty from Patton to this throughout the summer. But if you want a material, if you want an item, you have to go to that request form and fill it out, put in your name, make sure you mention me if you want. It doesn't matter, I guess. But so, for example, if you want streaming media, if you want to watch a movie in your class, but you're no longer physically near a DVD player, this would be the form to fill out to see if we could find that content for you in another way. Sometimes we have been able to digitize DVDs. Again, it's just license to license. All of this stuff depends on what we're able to do or what we feel comfortable doing legally with regards to copyright. So a lot of times I've just been buying things, right? So if we have a book, or if there are 4 copies of a book in OhioLink, but you can't get it, or our copy's checked out or something like that, just send me an email or fill out the content request form and we'll see what we can do for you. I think that's been relatively quick, although honestly, with courses starting up here pretty soon, I would guess there's going to be a backlog with that, so the sooner the better. But typically, at least in terms of affordable course materials, this would be, for example, if you want to use 4 statistics books, right, and not have all 4 of those books on a reserve shelf, but you really only need the 1 chapter on ANOVA, or you need the 1 chapter on how to use SPSS to do whatever, T-tests or something like that. You can talk to us and we can see about getting those chapters scanned and then placed on course reserve. So your students would just have to go into the library course reserves and pull up the PDF, and then they could print it out. They could look at it online. They could do whatever they want. That can be a material that we own, and it can also be your private copy. So if you have these books, make sure you put that in the content request form. I own all 4 of these textbooks. I can get them to the library on this date. What I need is chapter 1 from this book, chapter 7 from this book, and so forth. So really, we're there to help you as best we can, and we'll let you know if we can't help you. So, but this primarily would be either putting scans on our course reserves, or you could make requests that you could then embed those PDFs into your Blackboard if that's what you wanted. All right, I will go back here. Streamlining your syllabus is essentially you as a College of Ed prof would contact me and say something like, here's my syllabus. These are how we're handling specific topics week to week. I would like to move away from the more expensive textbook. Is there any way you could help me? And so in that case, you and I would get together probably in a Teams meeting, and I would say something like, would a journal article on this particular topic be a good substitute? Could you use that journal article in conjunction with this video to teach the same content? Again, there's no magic here. I would just work with you to see if we could find open Creative Commons or open access or OER products that would be similar to what your more expensive version is offering, so that we could kind of customize what it is that your students are reading. The third bullet here, linking to library content. We have something called a curriculum builder. I'm going to scroll down here. There is a video. I won't make you watch this right now, but essentially it's an add-in, it's a plug-in to Blackboard. So you would, and this video I think is 3 minutes long, something like that. And it just very quickly shows you how to set that up in your Blackboard account. And what it is, it opens up a search in Blackboard and allows the professor to do a search for whatever, two-way ANOVA or something like that. And then you can find the results in our Articles Plus database that we pay for. Then you can click on the ones you want and create a reading list. So what this ends up doing is it bypasses having the students jump into the library databases and try to find the full content on, or the full text content on their own. So in most cases, what you can do is just create reading lists for week 1, week 2, class 1, class 2, and then these links in Blackboard will take them right to the licensed accounts, the licensed content that we have already paid for, and it sort of makes it more streamlined in terms of getting to the reading assignments. There are little blurbs here about how to use permalinks. Again, if these are anything that you have trouble with, just send me an email. But essentially, the persistent or permanent link means that you can't just go to the URL, copy paste from the database, and put it into a reading list, because it needs to go through the proxy, and that URL that you'd be copy pasting would just be specific to that moment, to that search, so it won't work. But this page actually shows you how to find the permalinks in the different databases. So Articles Plus, Medline, OhioLink, they all have, and Alice all have permalinks available to them. So that's what you would use to embed or email to one another, etc. Okay. Again, I already sort of talked about this, but scanning content to your Blackboard course. So you would fill out the form, we would scan, we would send you the files, and then you could put the PDFs into your Blackboard class. The Alt Textbook Initiative, again, I kind of talked about that a little bit, but again, I don't know if we're going to be offering another workshop series anytime soon, but this was a cost-saving initiative. So we had faculty coming into the library, and we would have workshops on different types of things, like in this case, media, multimedia, Panopto, Tophat, stuff like that. The links to the reports for those are here, but again, if you don't want to bother reading the final report, just send me an email and we can talk about it. Trying to find something more specific. OhioLink does have this, the Ohio Open Education Collaborative, and this again are just deals that we have with specific publishers, and we have all of these different areas that you can go to for resources, for example, macroeconomics, algebra, calculus, that sort of thing, math education. So these are all links to open ed materials that have been contracted through OhioLink. So there is that. There are other things, obviously. Merlot is a great website to go to look for OER content for courses. Sometimes they have an entire curriculum. Sometimes it's just one little section on a specific topic. Tophat is another initiative that we have going at Ohio University right now. This one is not through the libraries that I am familiar with, but if you do have questions about Tophat, we have this membership, and they do have open educational resources, so you can connect. And Jody, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think once you get your account for Tophat, that blends with Blackboard, and then you can link to these OER materials. Does that sound right?
Yeah, so Tophat does integrate. It originally was more for, it kind of replaced clickers here on campus. So it's a response system, but it has a new function opening up, which is neat for everyone who's moving online, where you can actually record lectures and have some interactivity built in. But they do also do, they have a textbook marketplace. They also, if you want to work on developing your own textbook for your course, they have instructional designers on their end who will work with faculty to help build that content for your course and set it up. So it's a neat tool. It's one we're not going to be talking about for this PICO series, but if you have questions about the tool specifically, OIT, you can schedule a consultation with them and they can fill you in on all the details.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So just down here, we have kind of a little checklist here about ways that you can create an affordable textbook option. Again, most of this stuff is stuff I've already sort of talked about. We can scan portions of books. We couldn't necessarily scan an entire book. Typically, that is for students that have registered with accessibility services. Sometimes they're able to bypass that, but for an entire class, we couldn't just scan the entire book and throw it out there for everybody to use for free. But that's where filling out that request form would come in, because you can then talk to the folks in the library that deal with this on a daily basis, and they'll be able to tell you exactly how many chapters from each book we could put up at the same time. Could we take down chapters and put chapters up? So that kind of thing. And again, if you felt more comfortable reaching out to me directly, you can do that, and then I'll get you into to have a meeting with some of the people that actually make these types of decisions. Again, we cannot do a physical copy of a textbook at this time, but we have been really trying our best to find alternatives, whether that is a digital version of the same book or digitizing specific chapters of books and so forth. All right. I think one of the, and I mentioned this with the curriculum builder and Blackboard, it really is, we have an enormous amount of content already paid for in our collection. So we might not, for example, have the exact title you're looking for, but we may have something we could substitute in exchange for that specific, say if you wanted to watch a video on Piaget or something like that, and you have one you want to watch, but we can't get our hands on the license for that, or it's in Netflix, but some of your students don't have Netflix accounts, we could work with you to see if we can find alternatives for that resource, or we can see if we can get a special deal or a license or a contract with the publisher or the producer of these types of things, and see if we can get that up. But again, the sooner the better in terms of requesting. So by all means, either reach out to me or just go directly to the content request form. Okay. All of this stuff seems kind of repetitive. Are there any questions that you have for me at this time? Don't be shy. Nobody. Any questions coming through chat?
Nothing so far.
Okay. I'm not sure how far to take this if no one has any questions. Jody, can you think of anything that I should be talking about more in detail, but I haven't at this point? I'm not sure what's been talked about in this series so far. So
No, I think you're on track. You know, we've covered in the original set kind of like the basics of course design and backward design. And then this week we've gotten into inclusive environments and communicating with students and talked a little bit about lectures. So this affordable course content was that next piece. So yeah, just from an instructional design perspective, the libraries are really like a super resource. So if you haven't worked with Chris before, or you've inherited a textbook, it's a nice option to both kind of expand the content you're giving students access to, as well as look for lower cost materials. So there's a big push, like Chris was saying, to lower that end cost on the student side, and working with Chris or whomever your subject matter librarian is an awesome way to do that. We try to rely on them as much as we can when we're working with faculty as well to support in that way. So we talked affordable course material. Since we have time, do you want to talk maybe a little bit about working with the librarians if you're including library content, or you want to work with your students to work with a librarian in the course?
Sure. Not sure what you mean. Do you want me to walk?
So I guess I did a presentation with the College of Fine Arts the other week, and they were, sometimes they'll ask all the students to write a research paper, and that subject matter librarian would be inundated with 20 students in a week. So they asked kind of to be given a heads up, or talked about different things they might work with students to do. And I know in the past we've kind of worked with some programs to help with research and things.
Sure. So I'll just talk a little bit about what I do and how I typically meet with people. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay, so under the staff and departments, subject librarians and archivists, so you can see we still have a few people left working in our libraries. If you scroll down here, I'm education and probably children's literature. Yep, there I am. So depending on your topic area, there would be we have different librarians that handle different disciplines. So I'm the College of Education for the most part, although Sherry Sains, actually also Human and Consumer Sciences. Sherry Sains handles you folks as well, although that I'm more than happy to meet with anybody. But things like business, for example, would be Chad Boninger. Andrew Stewart does environmental studies, film is Lorraine. So again, each one of us handles different areas. Here's our contacts or way to reach us. I just think this should go back to my staff page. Oh, nuts. Hey, that's nice. I hope that wasn't my fault. Okay, I'll just go up here, staff directory, and we'll go back that way. And I will try to remember to report that. Okay. So here I am. Typically what I do, I do meet with undergrads occasionally, but for the most part, what I do is meet with graduate students, and I usually help them at seminar paper or dissertation time. So I help them with chapter 2. the lit review. I usually refer to it as kind of like a bartender, an academic bartender. So I listen to them. Typically, we set up about an hour-long meeting. And well, in the old days, they would come into the library and we would sit down in front of a whiteboard or a large screen computer and just kind of work through their questions. I'm not an expert on almost anything. Not even my area anymore, my PhD area, but I do listen really well, and I also know where materials are in our databases. So I found that it usually helps a graduate student to just sit down and talk to somebody about their topic, and then my, I guess, naivete about their topic allows me to ask questions that then gets their head working in a way that we can start to create that research funnel, that a list of keywords that leads them down to that point at the end of chapter 2 where they dive into the methodology of chapter 3. That's probably the best part of my job. I really like that. And I get the most satisfaction out of working with graduate students that are trying to write a paper, sometimes for the first time, or sometimes for the first time at this level. So that's what I would do. I would say reach out to me before you assign them. So for example, if you put it in the syllabus, each one of you has to contact Chris at some time through the semester and create a meeting. That starts to become problematic with the amount of students that we have currently at the College of Education. Typically, I would usually say something like, could you just ask them if they have a problem, or if they need me to reach out to me. Usually if it's required, the student just sometimes will just show up and just stand there like, I really don't have anything to say. I just had to come and see you. But I do have the time to meet with students, especially if they're working on their dissertations or a seminar paper, or if they're new to the College of Education. I think a lot of times we'll have students that are not traditional students, or they did their bachelor's degree 15, 20 years ago and are now coming back to do the master's degree. So a lot of this is new territory. I'm perfectly happy to, I guess now it would be virtually sit down, but if they grab time in my calendar, I just invite them to a Teams meeting and we meet, and it's usually 45 minutes to an hour, and we just walk through the process. I have gone through the process myself at the College of Education here, so I do offer that as well. But it's a nice, it's the best part of my job. So I guess plugging for myself, if you do have students that kind of knowledge needs to be gathered, if they are having trouble with searches, or they always use Google but they need to learn how to use the library databases, that's my job, and I'm more than happy to meet with them. I'm also more than happy to come in, again, that's a term that's a little different now. I am willing to meet with students synchronously in your class. If you are meeting synchronously, I am developing a LibGuide, a subject course guide for education right now. I'm hoping to have it done next week. That will have short little videos. So I have been using Screencast-O-Matic, but I think we're having issues with that license, so I'm not sure what I'm going to use, but I've been capturing my screen and walking through database searches, for example, or how to develop a research vocabulary that allows you to jump from database to database with your topic, understanding how to broaden or narrow your searches to get the results that are most pertinent to you. So that's the kind of thing I do, and I'm more than happy to meet with people. I don't know if this works. I guess I'll just try it. Yeah, okay, so I won't do that, but whenever you're on a page and you see this live chat, that is exactly what it is. And so I think currently we have people in front of that chat. I can't remember if it's 8 o'clock at night or 10 o'clock at night, but we're all on this during our work hours. So when I get to my desk at 8, I turn on my computer and I log into this chat. And so we're all sitting there on that chat queue. So if you did have a question that wasn't particularly pertinent to me necessarily, just, hey, can you tell me, is the coffee shop opening up next week? Or what hours, what floors are open, that sort of thing. You can just jump onto that live chat and get a quick answer instead of waiting for me to get back to your email. I pride myself on answering emails as quickly as I can. If it's a Saturday night and you send me an email at 10 o'clock and it's kind of a complex email, I probably won't get to it till the next day. But if it is something that I can handle relatively quickly on my phone, I am more than happy to do that. Jody, I don't know if that was what you thought people would find beneficial.
Yeah, I think that's great. I accidentally muted myself again. I think that was great. Would sharing the affordability checklist be something good to do now?
Oh, sure. There's a PDF that I believe is being sent to you right now. It's just a different version of, I'm trying to find the page. It's a different version of the affordable course materials list right here. I was just using this instead of a PowerPoint, but I believe that PDF that should be coming your way is just a different.
It's coming. My internet's just a little slow, so it'll pop in the chat soon.
Cool. And it's just the same thing, basically. It's just in a different format, probably with some clip art or something in the corners.
Yep, someone made it look nice. All right, so it should be in the chat now if anyone wants to take a look or use that as you're moving forward. And planning these courses for fall, it would be a good place to start thinking about how you can make your course more affordable for students.